In late 2024, Beijing shocked the world by suddenly restricting exports of critical minerals like gallium and germanium, two elements that most people had never even heard of, but which are absolutely vital to modern technology. These seemingly obscure elements are the hidden backbone of our digital age, essential for everything from smartphones and laptops to advanced military systems, satellites, and even green technologies like solar panels. China, as the world's dominant producer, turned these minerals into a powerful weapon in its ongoing economic rivalry with the United States and its allies, leveraging its near monopoly to gain strategic advantage. The ban sent shockwaves through American tech and defense industries, threatening to cripple production lines and sending boardrooms into a frenzy of urgent meetings and contingency planning. Suddenly, the global supply chain, built for decades on cheap, reliable Chinese minerals, was thrown into chaos, with companies scrambling to secure alternative sources. Financial analysts warned of halted production, massive delays, and soaring prices for electronics and defense equipment, as markets reacted with panic and uncertainty. Yet despite the dire predictions, the feared collapse of American industry didn't fully materialize. Instead, the minerals began to flow through new, secretive routes, quietly bypassing official restrictions and finding their way to U.S. buyers. A shadowy network of traders, shippers, and middlemen emerged almost overnight, exploiting loopholes, relabeling cargo, and responding to the relentless market demand. This wasn't about government negotiations or diplomatic breakthroughs. It was corporate ingenuity, resourcefulness, and the invisible hand of the market at work. The episode revealed a core truth. Global demand always finds a way, even when official doors slam shut and governments try to control the flow. This is the story of how American buyers outsmarted China's ban, using transshipment, relabeling, and a relentless pursuit of profit to keep the world's technology running. In this new era, the tech war is fought not with soldiers or missiles but with shipping containers, customs forms, and the ingenuity of global commerce. Why did China's ban matter so much? Because gallium and germanium are the backbone of modern technology. Gallium powers high-performance chips in 5G, smartphones, and satellites, far superior to traditional silicon. Germanium is vital for night vision, thermal imaging, and fiber optic cables, the backbone of the internet and military tech. Without these minerals, everything from mobile data to advanced radar grinds to a halt. The US government classifies them as critical for national security and economic stability. China produces 80% of the world's gallium and 60% of its germanium, giving it enormous leverage. The ban wasn't just a trade move, it was a direct strike at America's technological heart. For US companies, finding a workaround became a matter of survival. The world may never see these elements, but our lives depend on them. That's why the scramble to bypass the ban was so intense. The ban was Beijing's retaliation for US tech restrictions on Chinese firms. Overnight, prices for gallium and germanium soared, and global supply chains were thrown into chaos. US, Japanese, and European manufacturers faced immediate shortages and rising costs. Officially, China allowed exports only with nearly impossible to get licenses for US buyers. The message: strategic rivals were cut off. American companies faced a stark choice: wait years for new sources, or find a way around the ban. The market responded with innovation, not surrender. Desperate to keep factories running, buyers began searching for cracks in China's wall. The result: a new clandestine trade route emerged almost overnight. Diplomatic protests changed nothing. Beijing held firm. The crisis exposed just how vulnerable the West was to a single supplier, but it also set the stage for a global game of cat and mouse. The scramble for minerals had only just begun. The main workaround? Transshipment. Instead of shipping minerals directly from China to the US, they're sent to a neutral country first. There, paperwork is altered to disguise the true origin. The minerals are then re-exported to the US, appearing to come from places like Thailand or Mexico. Shipping data shows a surge in Chinese exports to these countries, and a matching spike in US imports from them. Mexico, with its proximity and trade ties, became a key hub. Chinese minerals arrive at Mexican ports, are relabeled, and then shipped north. US customs, overwhelmed by millions of containers, struggle to spot the deception. Brokers and freight forwarders orchestrate the process, charging a premium for their expertise. For US tech firms, the extra cost is worth it to keep production lines moving. The transshipment loophole is now an essential part of the minerals trade. It's a global shell game, complex, costly, but effective. The supply chain adapts even as governments try to clamp down. Transshipment isn't the only trick. In third countries, minerals are unpacked, relabeled, and sometimes minimally processed to change their legal origin. For example, Chinese gallium might be melted and recast in Mexico, or germanium mixed with additives. This minor transformation lets exporters claim a new country of origin under global trade rules. Customs agents rely on paperwork, not forensic tests, so these shipments usually pass inspection. The sheer volume of trade makes thorough checks impossible. Everyone in the chain, Chinese producers, intermediaries, US buyers, can claim plausible deniability. The system is designed to diffuse responsibility and exploit the complexity of global trade. Enforcing targeted sanctions in this environment is nearly impossible. What do industry insiders say about the current state of global supply chains? Behind closed doors, their perspectives reveal a world far more complex than public statements suggest. Publicly, US companies emphasize their commitment to building resilient supply chains, touting investments in new infrastructure and partnerships. But in private, executives admit that business must continue, by any means necessary, even if it means bending the rules or finding creative workarounds. A supply chain manager confides, "The ban is a headline, but business finds a way. We're constantly adapting because waiting years for new mines just isn't an option." The reality is, we can't afford to let production stall while new sources are developed. Logistics experts are seeing a surge in demand for creative solutions out of Southeast Asia, as companies reroute shipments and seek alternative suppliers. "Our clients don't care if the gallium takes a vacation in Bangkok as long as it arrives," says a Hong Kong freight director, highlighting the lengths companies will go to keep materials moving. Industry analysts agree, the minerals are still flowing, just through more expensive, less transparent, and often riskier routes than before. China's ban, in practice, acts more like a tax than a true blockade, raising costs but rarely stopping shipments entirely. The shadow trade brings new risks, higher costs, less quality control, and the rise of middlemen who profit from the uncertainty and complexity. Companies are under increasing pressure to deliver even as governments ramp up scrutiny and demand greater transparency in their supply chains. CEOs publicly promise diversification and resilience, but privately, many still rely on loopholes and back channels to keep their factories running smoothly. The reality is, everyone is playing the game, strategizing and hoping the loopholes last long enough to weather the storm. The stakes are higher than ever, and the rules of global trade are always changing, forcing companies to adapt or risk being left behind. The shadow trade's biggest impact? Soaring costs that ripple through the entire global economy, affecting not just companies but everyday consumers as well. Rerouted shipments, extra paperwork, and risk premiums have driven up prices by 40% or more. Every step in the supply chain now comes with added uncertainty and expense, making it harder for businesses to plan ahead. Manufacturers are absorbing the hit, but it's starting to affect prices for electronics, solar panels, and more. Consumers may soon notice higher costs for everything from smartphones to renewable energy systems as companies pass on these increases. The US isn't alone. Europe and Japan are also scrambling for rerouted supplies, driving prices even higher. Competition for limited resources is fierce, and no major economy is immune to the fallout. Countries like Thailand and Mexico are booming as logistics hubs, but their governments walk a diplomatic tightrope. They must balance lucrative new trade opportunities with the risk of angering powerful trading partners. Officially, they deny facilitating the trade, but the economic benefits are hard to ignore. Local economies are seeing a surge in jobs and investment, even as officials insist on their neutrality. US import data tells the story. Gallium and germanium now flow from unlikely new sources. The numbers don't lie. The trade routes have shifted almost overnight. Mexico, once a minor player, is suddenly a top supplier, without new mines. The minerals are simply taking a longer, more complicated journey to reach their final destinations. The numbers reveal a global market adapting in real time to geopolitical shocks. Traders and analysts are watching closely as prices swing and new patterns emerge. The ban has created a seller's market for anyone who can move minerals out of China. Those with access to alternative routes or creative logistics are reaping huge profits. The new trade routes are lucrative but unstable. Political tensions, infrastructure challenges, and shifting alliances mean that today's winners could be tomorrow's losers. The world's tech supply chain is being rewritten on the fly. The only certainty, change. As companies and countries adapt, the future of global trade remains unpredictable, and the stakes have never been higher. The gray market is thriving, but it's risky for everyone involved. Beijing is tightening enforcement, threatening severe penalties for Chinese companies caught skirting the ban. Intermediary countries face diplomatic pressure and the threat of sudden crackdowns. A single raid or policy shift could leave shipments stranded and buyers exposed. US companies risk being blacklisted in China if caught. Quality control is another problem. Longer, murkier supply chains mean more chances for fraud or contamination. A bad batch of minerals can ruin millions in high-tech products. The biggest risk, the loophole could close at any moment. The current system is unstable, relying on Beijing's limited enforcement. If China cracks down, US firms could be left scrambling again. The shadow trade is a temporary fix, not a long-term solution. The West needs a more permanent answer. The real solution? Break free from dependence on China. The US and its allies are racing to build secure, independent supply chains for critical minerals. New mining projects are underway in the US and Europe, but progress is slow. Recycling is emerging as a promising alternative, recovering gallium and germanium from electronic waste. The EU's Critical Raw Materials Act and US government incentives are accelerating investment, but opening new mines or scaling recycling takes years, not months. In the meantime, secret supply chains keep factories running. The ultimate goal, a resilient system that can't be held hostage by geopolitics. Innovation is key, finding substitutes, using less, and designing smarter products. The crisis has sparked a new era of competition, and the race for mineral independence is just beginning.